Hey guys, connecting with Cynthia Thurlow for the very first time. She is a nurse practitioner, founder of CHT Wellness, two-time TEDx speaker, and a functional nutritionist. Side note, I love functional nutritionists. I'm really excited to talk to you. Co-author of a book. She has a podcast. She lives in DC with her husband, her boys, and her dogs. And she had this viral video that went out on intermittent fasting, which we've never talked about here on the show. We don't really talk too much about health, but you know what? That affects every part of our lives as business owners and as leaders, as human beings. So I know this is going to be an awesome conversation. So grateful for you. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me. And thanks for that lovely introduction.
Yes, ma'am. Now, for our listeners, when I send out a booking invite to guests, I have them fill out this questionnaire where they just get to know them a little bit more. And Cynthia, you made a statement that I thought was just incredible, and I couldn't agree with more. It says, sometimes great adversity sets the stage for great things. Why is that something that you believe?
I've always held that, close to my heart, because I'm very grateful for where I am in my life, but I wasn't exactly born with a silver spoon in my mouth. So, all the things that have come into my life have been through great effort. What I'm speaking about most specifically recently was that, earlier this year, I went on a vacation with my husband, came home, and 48 hours later, I had a 13-day hospital stay. If I hadn't been as healthy as I was, I might have died, but I was very, very sick. And throughout my hospitalization, I focused on two things. One were my boys and my husband. Wanted to get home to them. I was like, they are too young for me to die, that it's not an option. And the other thing was I had already accepted an invite to give my second TED Talk in my home state where I was born. And I was so committed. I was like, I know people need to hear this message. They need to hear it from someone like me. It's really, really important. And so those were the two things I thought about, when I was really down and out and feeling pretty sorry I had one day where I let myself feel really sorry for myself, but otherwise I was like, I'm getting out of here and I'm going to deliver this talk. And so 27 days after I got out of the hospital, I delivered that TED Talk. Still a little bit weak, but managed to get, the general theme of what I wanted to say out. And then, the greatest blessing was 6 weeks later. I already had surgery. I had recovered from that. And then the talk went viral. It was fast. I think I had almost 100,000 views in 24 hours. We're nearly 2 million views, just a little over a month. And so very clearly, that was, when you talk about great adversity, almost dying and then coming back and, recognizing how the human spirit, mind, body, spirit, can really sustain you when you are really struggling. And let's be frank, I've taken care of very sick people as a nurse practitioner. My background's in cardiology and ER medicine. It's very different when you become the patient, and that whole concept of surrender, that you have to just surrender. Otherwise you're not going to get better. It's like, I just have to let people take care of me. I have to put trust in other people, and just accept this is part of this wild ride that I'm on right now. So
now, isn't it interesting that you kind of enter into this state of surrender yourself, and then a few weeks later get such a huge boost? A viral video. What was that like?
I think I was stunned because the first TED Talk I did was in December, and that came out in February, and it was kind of a slow, it was a very specific TED Talk. I recognize it's not, the appeal of that topic is not the same. I think it was weird when people that I look up to on social media or a business coach were like, wow, you don't understand the impact this is going to have on you. And my team didn't understand what the impact was, neither did I. And so all of a sudden it was an explosion of interest in my business and my message. And, my kids thought it was a fun thing that every day they would check in and say, how many YouTube views I had. And we had to get to the point where because they're 11 and 13, they're old enough that they can read the comments that people make. And so after 24 hours, I forbade them to read anything. And I did the same thing for myself, because inevitably you're going to have people that are going to be critical. And it gets to a point where some of it's not even constructive. I'll take the constructive criticism. I'm all about, bettering what I'm doing. But, it gets to a point where you just have to, it's like, I'm just tuning out the noise. It's not productive. So for me, it was a little surreal. I think a lot of people go into doing a TED Talk with the hope that it will go viral. for differing reasons.
Yeah.
I never expected that. So I was completely stunned. I think it was honestly, I kept saying, pinch me. And I meant it sincerely, like, wow.
Yeah.
And I think even more strangely than that is, this will surprise people. I'm actually an introvert. So for me to get that kind of attention, one of my friends said, you realize almost 2 million people have seen you.
Wow.
And I was like, that freaks me out a little bit.
That's crazy.
But it's, stay true to the message. The messages that I've gotten across social media have been so incredibly, to me, it's just so heartfelt. People are like, you changed my life. I needed to hear this message. I was ready to give up. I've lost 5 pounds. People who just suddenly had been giving up on getting healthier, all of a sudden were like, okay, you broke it down into really easy, tangible things I can implement very easily.
Mm-hmm.
And now I feel like I have the support. I have a crew of women that will message me probably once a week. And they're like, I listened to your talk again this week. Every time I get something out of it. And I was like, wow, I'm so happy for you. That's really what it's done. Yeah. And I'm like, after years of writing prescriptions, if there's something I can recommend to people that they find beneficial that doesn't cost them anything. And ultimately it'll benefit their health long-term. I'm like, that's a great thing. Yeah. I feel very, very, I just say the word grateful. Like, it's like Brene Brown, when she talks about, I'm grateful. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So that's why I just repeat to myself, if I feel overwhelmed or stressed, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. So
I can feel that on you.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Cynthia, tell us, what is your message for those who haven't seen a TED Talk, don't know what we're talking about? What is your message, and why do you think that it's resonating so powerfully with people?
So my message, relevant to intermittent fasting, is just, this is a technique, a strategy that people can implement and adults can implement into their lives easily, effectively, that have profound benefits. Everyone likes to focus on the weight loss or the fat loss, but it's beyond that. It's lowered insulin levels, which is great for brain health. It's inducing a process called autophagy, which is spring cleaning for the cells. It improves your blood pressure. It improves, your cardiovascular conditioning. There's so many benefits. I think people are tired of gimmicks. I get so frustrated when I see, someone selling $100 protein powder that's full of garbage, or someone's selling a bunch of supplements that, oh, you need a fat burner. No, you don't. You actually don't need that crap. What you need is, you need to change your diet. You need to get more sleep. You need to shorten your feeding window. And that is going to have a greater net benefit, because we want things to be sustainable. That's part of my frustration. And I think it resonates with people because they're like, that makes sense. The whole concept of mini meals never made sense to me. And I remember saying it to patients, like, you're just to have 5 or 6 mini meals a day. Well, no, that just stokes this insulin release, which makes us fat, which is not what we want. So I think that a lot of people are looking for common sense strategies. I think many people don't want to have to spend more money. Like, I would rather you take your budget that you were spending on Shakeology, and I'm going to use that as an example, $100 bag of garbage. I would rather that you take that $100 and put it into your grocery budget. Like, I would prefer you buy more vegetables. I would love if you spent a little more money on the quality of protein that you're choosing to consume. Or, invest in doing something active, like get a gym membership and move your body, or just get outside and walk. So for me, it's all about common sense, realistic strategies that anyone can implement. And again, it goes back to that cost thing, but most people that I interact with, they don't have thousands of dollars to spend on supplements every month, or thousands of dollars to spend on protein powders. So I'm like, I'd rather you buy organic chicken breasts and eat those as your first meal of the day than, buy a bag of crappy. You can see clearly this is something, it's a pain point for me.
My head's about to fall off, because those of you listening, I'm nodding so much. Like, this is church for me. And if you don't know what functional medicine is, I want you to go to Google and Google functional medicine and learn about what she's all about, because it's truth. It is complete truth. So for those who are just new to you, tell us a little bit why functional medicine, intermittent fasting, this kind of common sense approach is something that, a conclusion that you came to as a nurse practitioner.
Yeah. Well, I think, so I worked in ER medicine as a nurse, and then worked in cardiology as a nurse practitioner for 16 years. And I think probably when I became a parent, so my oldest will be 14 in August, which is hard to believe. I started to pivot a little bit. And then when I had a child with food allergies, I pivoted more. And then I read a book called The Unhealthy Truth by Robin O'Brien. If you haven't read it, it's a life-changing book. It was a book that made me so angry. Every time I read a chapter, I had to put it down because I just couldn't absorb more. It made me so angry. I think there are specific things that started to happen that I was like, we have to do better. It isn't just about treating a symptom with a pill. And that's the pharmaceutical industry. There's a lot of benefit. Obviously, if it wasn't for the pharmaceutical industry, I probably would not be here. So obviously there's a time and a place for pharmaceuticals, but I don't think every symptom that our body has is a demonstration that we need to create a pill to address it. So, for me, I just felt like there was more to being healthy than just writing prescriptions. And so I dove down a rabbit hole of, first I became a wellness coach. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And then a very good friend of mine who had worked at one point for Martha Stewart, who, worked on Wall Street, and said, you're so interested in food. You really need to think about, diving into a nutrition program. So I spent some time doing that. And that's when everything lit up. It was like, this makes sense to me. This is something easier to implement. I mean, easier empirically to implement. But if we can change our diets and impact our health as pervasively as a pill, why the heck do we not? I don't want to be on pills. I mean, yeah. I don't want to be taking medicine for the rest of my life. So that was part of the shift. And then I got sick. When I say sick, I'm in my I was in my early 40s, hit perimenopause, which is that 5 to 7 years preceding menopause. And I gained weight and I had trouble sleeping and I had weird food cravings. And so that's when I realized I needed to take a step back from my very overexercised, underslept, super stressful job working in cardiology. And so I left clinical medicine and became an entrepreneur, which is not for the faint of heart either, but very different, that I get a little bit more control over what happens. So for me, the process really was pivoting into, this is the work that I think God intended for me to be doing, what I'm doing now. And so the intermittent fasting piece kind of fell into my lap about 2 years ago, largely because I had a business coach who happened to mention that she was doing it. And then I was like, well, I'm not sure I believe in that, but I'm going to try it. And all of a sudden I had more energy. I was sleeping better. I was kind of able to kind of gain back, the strength and the fitness level I'd been before. And so I just think it's a fantastic strategy for nearly everyone to implement. And again, it goes back to getting back to basics, changing the way we eat, changing our relationship with food is so crucial, because the other piece is, I look at food as fuel. I've always been that way. I've never been a person. I mean, I like dark chocolate, don't get me wrong, but beyond that, like, I'm not someone that looks at food like, I'm depressed, I'm going to go home and eat a gallon of ice cream. I've never been that person, but I recognize a lot of people have an emotional relationship with food. And so that's where intermittent fasting can be a little bit more challenging, because they're afraid to, release this hold that food has on them. But I think when you take changing your diet and implementing intermittent fasting, I think that can be as important, if not more important, than taking a pill every day. So that's kind of where I've evolved. And I tell people, I'm like, listen, I'm still a nurse practitioner. I still use, those strategies. I get lots of referrals from my previous colleagues. And, in many respects, I think that it makes me better as a clinician, because I'm thinking broad. I'm not thinking tunnel vision, like I need to fit, there's this one symptom and I have to give a pill for that one symptom. And that's in many ways the way that the Western medicine has gone. And I think that's really to our disadvantage. And it's not being critical of my colleagues, because they are still doing great work. It just means that we need to evolve. Our current medical model really is broken in many ways. When we're looking at preventative care and chronic long-term care, the acute care stuff, we're rock stars. I mean, that's where, Western medicine really does a superlative job, saving lives, getting people through surgery, et cetera. But I just think that there's a better way. And I think most people, when they really think about it, that's truly what they desire.
We could have a long talk. And my background is mental health.
Oh, yes.
So many parallels with this is mental health too, but I'll spare you guys. I'll spare you guys some time. But kind of just to, we're getting close to towards the end of our interview. And guys, I want you to check out her TED Talk. It will be linked in the show notes. And also she has an intermittent freebie we'll talk about here in a second. But before getting to that, you're speaking to solopreneurs, people who are stressed out of their mind. They have young families. They either, if they haven't left their career, they're about to, and they're going all in, just like you did a few years ago, just with your business and your dream. And so the food thing sometimes is an afterthought, like
Yeah.
in between, you know, calls and all that, you're just shoving food in your face. Sometimes you're mindlessly snacking. And so it's such a behavioral thing too, that I think we struggle with, specifically for leaders, entrepreneurs, self-starters, stressed out of their mind. Can you give us a few tips? Like, how can we implement some of these strategies and become healthier?
Yeah. So I would say first and foremost, you absolutely positively need to be getting 7 to 8 hours of high quality sleep. That means you sleep in a cold, dark room. You wear blue blocking glasses after 6 p.m. You make sure when you get up in the morning, you have 5 or 10 minutes at least outside in the sun, so that the receptors on your skin and in your retina can actually reset your circadian rhythm. And the circadian rhythm is, you know, how cortisol is distributed throughout the day. You know, it's highest in the morning, ebbs and flows throughout the day, and lowest at night. Got to keep yourself hydrated. I know a lot of entrepreneurs are hardcore coffee addicts. They love their Starbucks. They love their espressos. And so I tell them that's absolutely fine, but you want to make sure you're staying well hydrated. I think another really key piece is making sure when you break your fast, if you're doing intermittent fasting, or you are someone that's still, you know, eating 3 meals a day, ensuring you're getting healthy protein and good quality, high quality fats with every meal. I'm not anti-carb. That's not what my point is. But we as women just don't need as many carbs as like a growing child, a teenager, or men can get away generally with more carbs than we can. But get your carbs from vegetables, preferably non-starchy ones. I myself cycle my carbohydrates. That works really well for me. And I think it's important to really, like, I know a lot of people enjoy exercising, but less about running, you know, a marathon, and more about doing things that will kind of calm, you know, it's all about supporting the brain. So you want to make sure that you're doing grounding work, yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi, you know, things you can still run, you can still do those kinds of activities, but making sure you're doing things that kind of gear your brain down, and finding a hobby that you love, or being around people that you love. It's really, really important, whether it's a pet. You know, I have 2 dogs, and they talk about studies that people that own animals, they have lower blood pressure, lower stress levels. But cultivating a hobby or being around people that you love and enjoy, I think is so critical. And I think everyone does a good job with getting in the gym, and then they forget all the other stuff. And I remind people as we get older, I say, you know, north of 35, I think we need to be doing more stuff to support our brain health. And so the healthy fats, the sleep, making sure you're getting plenty of hydration, and then ensuring that you're doing things that bring you joy. And that's crucial and critical. And I think entrepreneurs, we're the worst because we have a hard time turning ourselves off. Like, you need to have a hard and fast. These are the hours that I work. I have a team that works with me, and we're just bringing on 2 more people. But making sure that you've got a team of people that support you, and just being respectful of boundaries, not just your own boundaries, but your clients' boundaries, your patients' boundaries, whomever you work with. I tell clients all the time, sometimes you'll get a response in the evening, but that doesn't mean that I'm normally going to be doing that. But sometimes that's just the only time during the day I have to respond.
Right.
But I think, you know, cultivating those boundaries, and I would imagine with your background, there's probably things that you do with your clients as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For our very last question, we're going to link the TED Talk in the show notes, but you have a freebie about intermittent fasting, a bunch of tips in there. And where can people connect with you online?
Yeah. So my website, it's on my website. So it's www.chtwellness.com. I am on Twitter, very active there. I love Twitter, Instagram, as well as Facebook. And interestingly enough, you know, it's amazing. And I'm not sure if you feel the same way. You know, the longer I do this, the more certain social media platforms appeal to me than others. Facebook still is just an easy place to have groups. That's usually where my groups are, but I have a CHT Wellness community. That's a free group that anyone can join, men and women. It's not just women. I think there's a misnomer that I only speak to women, but it's largely because I've done 2 TED Talks that wanted me to talk just about women. But I do provide content that would be applicable to men and women as well.
Absolutely. I want everybody to take your advice. If you're not watching this via video, your skin is so radiating.
Oh, thank you.
You're gorgeous. Like, you wouldn't have said like 40s. I would have never guessed that.
So, you just made my day. Thank you.
Seriously.
Thank you. No, that's a lovely compliment.
I mean it. But guys, the very last question, I ask all my guests this, and this is a little bit off the topic of health, but it could or it couldn't be. I don't know. But if we were to go back in time, let's say to when you were in your early mid 40s, when you got that sickness and you were really struggling not only with your health, but also too this next stage of your life where it's kind of figuring out, do I want to stay in
Yeah.
this role, or do I want to take a very risky leap into
Yeah.
starting my own thing? If you were to go back to Cynthia then and sit with
Mhm.
her for just a moment, tell her one thing, what would that be?
Oh, it's going to be okay. I mean, it's a blind leap of faith. I mean, my aunt was telling me this last night. She said, it was one of the best decisions you could have ever made. She said, look at what you've done in 3 years, profitable in 2 years, replaced my MP salary. And I'm 20, even with my healthcare hiccup earlier this year, I'm 25% ahead of where I was last year. So telling her it's going to be okay. Because I think about it now and I'm like, medical professionals have no business training. Like I had to learn it all. And now I'm like, I'm super savvy. But at the time I didn't know anything other than being an NP, being a mom, being a wife. That's all I knew. So it's going to be okay, which is what my mother used to tell me growing up. Everything will be okay. And, that's just what I tell myself. And now I just kind of say, well, I needed the validation that I was looking for. I have. So definitely the right decision.
It's something we all need to hear, especially
Yeah.
this group of people. Thank you so much for your time, Cynthia. It was an
Thank
honor.
you.